here we have something like a rainbow package. So what I want to do is, let's say I book the rainbow package, which has $300 an hour. So I want to know that exactly how much I'll have to pay with all the breakdown, right, around insurance and everything. So let's say I want to do that particular calculation. So as you can understand, by doing that, it basically means that there is some mathematical calculation which it has to do. So you have to write another new tool for that. So for that, what we have done is we have a pricing calculator tool. Hi everyone, welcome to the channel. We have started this playlist on AI engineering for Java developers, and these are the videos we have done so far. So in the last video, we talked about that while you are architecting an AI agent, there are certain limitations. And while talking about the limitations, we talked about how adding memory and RAG solves that. Today, we will talk about tool calling and structured outputs. So let me take you to that slide from where we had started. So this is where we talked about that if you have statelessness in the conversation where I prompted my name and it couldn't really remember, we have seen how the memory implementations we added. Now, if you have not watched the previous two videos where we talked about the foundations of architecting an AI agent and adding memory and RAG, we are going to continue with that particular example of unicorn booking. So feel free to first watch those two videos. So you must watch those two videos first so that you can understand the context. So chat memory we added, and then for having context about the rental booking policy and the PDFs we uploaded in the knowledge bases, then we also have seen how we added RAG for that. Now, in continuation to that, we will see what is the need of adding tools. Why do we need tool calling? So now let me take you to the particular UI. So over here, I'm just going to ask that, can I book an unicorn this weekend? And let's see what does it reply with. Okay, so it cannot perform the booking actions for this weekend. That capability is not available yet. However, it is sharing all the details that it can from the RAG, basically the document access that it has. Now, the two reasons why tool calling or tools needs to be added for augmenting the capabilities of the AI agent is one, retrieval of information. Now, when I'm saying this weekend, it has no context of the date and time. So it will not be able to figure out what does this weekend or the date means. Secondly is about the taking of actions. So when I'm saying to book the unicorn, it has to go ahead and check the availability, make the reservation, check in the database, all of those things, which it will not be able to do. So now this is why we need to have this is why we need to talk about tool calling. So this particular documentation says that tools are mainly used for two things, information retrieval and taking action. Now, when we talk of information retrieval, it can be from database, web service, file system. The goal is to augment the knowledge of the model because the model has a knowledge cutoff so that it can answer the question which it would not otherwise be able to answer because it has a cutoff. And secondly, about taking action. Now, let's say I want to do this reservation of anything. I also want to do the CRUD operations, save it in the database. How will I be able to do that? I have to expose some functionality, some business logic, some functions, some method in the form of tools for doing that so that it can take that action. It can create that record in the database or it can trigger a certain workflow. So basically, we need tools for these two reasons. And we have just seen from the example of the UI that if I want to actually go ahead, now that I have the information, now that I have the memory capability, and now that I have the RAG, now I want to take action or I want to retrieve information. The next step is tool calling, which I have to add, or rather expose tools. One important line from this documentation is the model never gets access to any of the APIs that we are providing as tools, or rather the functions or the methods. It's a critical security consideration. So we'll see the code for this. What I want to show you all is this particular diagram, which exposes how it is working behind the scenes. So first is when we want to make a tool available to the model, we include the definition, which is in the form of name, description, and the input schema. We first expose that. Then when the model decides to tolerable, because a tool, it's not just one tool, it's going to be multiple tools that we are going to expose, right? So when the model decides which one is the appropriate tool, it will send a response with the tool name and the input parameter, which is as per the schema. Then the application, my application, the Spring AI application. So there are three parts to it. We have the tool, We have the model, we have the request, and here we have our core application which is running, right? Now the application will be responsible for using that tool name to identify which method it has to call with the provided input parameters, and then the result will be processed by the application. Then application will send the tool call result back to the model, and then the model will generate the final response. So behind the scenes, so many things, these 6 steps are happening, which you have to understand this interchange or the exchange of information that is happening, who is calling what, that you have to understand. So that is one important thing. So Spring AI provides built-in support for specifying tools. So we will use the first one, which is the declarative way of defining the annotation with @tool. However, if you want to use the low-level implementation method, tool callback is also available. Feel free to check this documentation so that you get all the necessary information on this. Another thing which I want to show you is, now we will definitely see how we are going to add tools to our chat client, default tools and the normal tools. But one important thing is about, yeah, so under the hood, the chat client will generate a tool callback. This is a class, tool callback class from each @tool annotated method. So the @tool annotated method, which we will expose now, it is actually generating this particular tool callback class and then passing that to the model. So there are 2 ways to do it. One is you just as a bean on a component, we define it with the annotation, or second, you define it manually like this if you want to generate the tool callbacks yourself. So this is the class tool callbacks utility class, which you can use to generate an array of the tool callback and pass in a new instance of every tool that you are creating. So there are 2 ways to do this. We are going to use the default tools. So what tools are we going to expose? Okay, so now into the IDE. So this is the component class that we have exposed, and I've written a couple of tools over here. So let me take you through how are we actually defining the tools here. So first is this annotation, like I've just showed in the documentation we are using. Most importantly, you have to write the description. So here, what we are doing is writing this tool to get the current date and time in the given time zone, and then this tool param is what in which we are also passing in that what time zone we are going to look for, right? And then some business logic that based on a time zone, it is going to do the formatting and get me the current date and time. This is the very first basic date time tool that we have implemented. Apart from that, for the context of this particular unicorn example, I have also included this tool where we will calculate the number of hours between now and future date time, so that when I'm going to make the booking of, let's say I want to book on this Saturday or this weekend, so it will check how many hours are remaining. This is useful for checking this policy related. So remember in the PDF that I had shown, there is a 72 hours prior booking or any kind of business logic related policy guidelines if you have in your RAG that you can specify through the RAG which you can specify. So for that reason, we have also done this. So this, it will calculate the number of hours until, and then the third tool, like I said, this Saturday, this weekend, it doesn't have a context about what does it mean. So it will get the date for the relative day reference, like this Saturday, tomorrow, yesterday, whatever the case is. And by the mix and the combination of all the 3 tools, it is now going to help me do the booking. So these tools I have exposed, very simple, like you have a component class and you have exposed. Now you have to integrate or you have to start embedding this into your chat client also. So we'll go back to our client config class. Over here, we had last seen, this is the chat memory repository, and we added that using our default advisor. The memory, for the memory, we have this chat memory advisor. For the RAG, we have the question answer advisor. So this much we had completed. Then what we can also do now is we can uncomment this line default tools, and I can expose this datetime tool and the other 2 tools. So as of now, I'll just keep the datetime tool only. And let me also uncomment this particular tool from here. So over here, we have added this particular datetime tool, and now we have added the instance of that. So with that, let us now run the server. So now I'm going to ask what date and time is it now in Bangalore? Next, I will ask planning to rent an unicorn this Saturday. Can we do that? This is just to check whether from today till Saturday, can it calculate that particular tool which we use the hours until, and based on the RAG policy that we have, the document that it has access to, there is certain guidelines around around the rentals. So let us see if it can make use of that as well as do the tool calling. Right. So first, as you can see, based on the current time, so this Saturday it calculated using the second tool. So yes, you can rent the unicorn because you are booking 121 hours in advance. We have a 72-hour minimum. So it is also making use of that particular document and then shared rest of the details. So far so good. So we have been able to use this particular date time tool. Now what I want is I'll open this particular document. Over here, we have something like a rainbow package. So what I want to do is, let's say I book the rainbow package, which has $300 an hour. So I want to know that exactly how much I'll have to pay with all the breakdown, right, around insurance and everything. So let's say I want to do that particular calculation. So as you can understand, by doing that, it basically means that there is some mathematical calculation which it has to do. So we have to write another new tool for that. So for that, what we have done is we have a pricing calculator tool in which same thing we have the description. Over here we are taking the rental cost, deposit, insurance, and then we are returning nicely what is the pricing breakdown. So what I'm expecting is if I give the name of the rental package, which is rainbow, it is supposed to go to the document, pick the number like the base unit cost of that package and do all of these calculation and give me the pricing breakdown. And similarly, I'm going to invoke this particular pricing calculator tool over here and pass it over here. So in this way, I can do the calculation and get to know how much I'll have to exactly pay for that particular package. So with that, I'll also, so in this way, you can see that you are actually going to add multiple tools. This is how you're going to do the tools and add the tools and expose them. What I'll ask is how much for 3 hours of rainbow with insurance. So I want that entire exact pricing calculation. So for 3 hours, it is calculating the $300 and then multiplying and giving me all the details, what is the schedule and everything, right? So this is how we are able to make use of the RAG plus the date time calculator plus the pricing calculator tool as well. So multiple things we are actually combining. Next, what we will do is, as I said, the tool calling, we have been able to do the information retrieval part, combining RAG and the tool. Second, we'll try to do, we'll take an action that if I'm making the reservation, I want an entry to the database that we already have. I want that entry to be made inside the database as well. So let's do that. Okay, so now, as I said, now we are going to save these bookings that we are doing into our database. So for doing that, what we will do is, so for doing that, this is the booking tool. Very simple, like we have this JDBC repository, we have a booking repository class over here. And here the tool, what I'm trying to do is book for just for that CRUD operation for booking the rental, and it will store the booking in the database. The tool params, it will take the customer name for whom you are booking, the package name, the date, duration, all of that. And then simply we have the save method. Very simple CRUD operation, nothing new, nothing fancy. So this is what we will do. And another tool I've exposed is to retrieve all the bookings for a given customer name. So very simple, plain and simple business logic, nothing to discuss more about the code, but it's more about the implementation. So this booking tool has to be exposed. So here we will expose that in this. And with that being done, let me restart the server. So the expectation is, as you know, that in our application properties, this is the file storage, the H2 file storage system that we are using. So we'll go here and we'll check that once we have done the booking, is it reflecting? So let me restart the server. I'll just say book a rainbow package for Varsha for 3 hours with insurance. So the booking has been confirmed. These are the details, booking ID and everything. So all the details have been generated. Now we are going to go into the H2 console. And this is a unicorn bookings class, the table, which has been created. So let me run this. Okay, the connection is restored. So over here, I'll go and run this. And as you can see that the details have been added over here. That insurance will be included. This is when it was created, the name, everything. So in this way, our tool that we have created, that simple business logic, the CRUD operation that we have been anyway writing, that particular tool, without even telling or without even us exposing any endpoint or anything, the agent has been able to invoke the tool, do the operation, save the details into the database as expected. So this is the power of using tools. So this is the basic necessity of why tool calling is so important when we are architecting AI agent. Number one, we learned how do we do the information retrieval properly, and secondly, based on the retrieval, now we are also taking action which we need to. So these two things are very important when you are actually architecting AI agent and want your AI agent to have the real-time access to do the things in real time. So with that, we are now done with the tool calling. The last section for today is the structured outputs, which I want to show you. So what it means, let me just quickly walk through the structured output documentation. So now the final part of the video is about structured outputs. So in simple words, you get a model output and you want to map that to a respective data type. Let's say into a Java class or XML or into JSON, like we have been always doing this, right? Parsing of the model output and map it to a relevant particular class or deserialize it. Now imagine this is the endpoint that I have written that give me the 5 big cities with population and the most popular food. Now LLMs, as it always generates the text, right, in human readable format, so it is going to give me a textual format as the output. And I will have to manually parse it, filter it, sort it, send it to another downstream API for whatever use case I need it. So instead of me manually parsing all of this text out, it would be nice if we could deserialize it into a certain typed reference. It could be like a Java class, like we have been doing our POJOs, or into a JSON format. So that is where structured output and the structured output converters which Spring AI provides us, it comes into play. So now coming to this documentation, it is important for downstream applications that rely on parsing the output values so that developers who want to turn these results from whatever we are getting from the AI model into data types such as JSON, Java classes, that can be passed to other application functions and methods. That is why the Spring AI structured output converters will help to convert the LLM output into a structured format which we can use or the downstream applications can use based on our requirement. So what actually happens is, before the LLM call, the converter will append the format instructions to the prompt, providing explicit guidance to the model on generating the desired output structure. And then after the LLM call, the converter will take the model's output text, which is in the text format, and transform it into instances of the structured type. So basically, we are parsing the raw text output, mapping into that structured data type without us having to write any code for that. So as you can see, this structured output converter, this particular interface will allow you to obtain the structured output by mapping that output to a Java class or array of values. So this example is like this list of cities and the population and the popular food. I want to map it. So this is the simple code. So this is the simple code for that. What we are going to do is we are going to pass in the prompt, and over here in the entity, earlier we were just passing. So in the entity, we are passing this parameterized type reference and we are returning list of city. So we have a very simple city record over here, and we want the output of that model to be parsed according to this particular format: the name, the population, the food. So with that, let us restart the server and let's see when we hit the endpoint in what are we getting it in the required format as we need it. So the endpoint is available at structured. This was unstructured. This is structured. See, this is how we are now getting it in the JSON format. So isn't it so convenient now that we have it in, we can now use it in our downstream applications in the way we want it to be instead of getting the text format always. So this is how you also understand that LLMs are great to work with, but when your business requirements are such that you will have to use the intermediate output, the values, and use it further for some other downstream applications like we always write the Java code for, right? So in those cases, you have to smartly play with the data structures, the data types, and that is where you have to know that what intermediate thing we can use in between so that we don't have to do the heavy lifting. Had you not known about the structured outputs, you would have done the heavy lifting of parsing the text or things like that. But the framework is already providing that to us. So this is what I wanted to cover as part of today's video, the tool calling and the structured output. In the next video, we are going to talk deep dive rather into MCP. So with that, thank you so much for watching the video. I hope you got some value out of this video and the series that we have been doing. Do share it with your fellow Java developers who are trying to upskill in the AI, want to become AI engineers rather. And also do let me know in the comments about what do you think of this video. The code samples are already available. The GitHub repo link will be shared, and it is also shared in the previous videos. But I would recommend you to watch all of these videos, like binge watch these videos rather than dash series, so that you'll get to know the flow. What are we doing one after another? Thank you so much. Thanks again for watching the video. See you all in the next one.